Our next speaker is Christina Sutcliffe. She'll be giving her talk, A Change Management, a Need, Not a Want. Now, Christina has a master's degree from Queen's University in a program that blended change management, human resources, and labor relations. She has over 10 years' experience in organizational development, involved in projects across multiple levels of government, including the federal government and here at the city. Also has experience from the private sector. She's been at the city for about 4 years, and she is the program manager of change management. Please welcome Christina Sutcliffe.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay? So thanks so much, James. 15 minutes for me, for folks who have worked with me before, knows that's really challenging, so I'm going to do the best I can. I am not a finance person. The folks who I work with in the projects know that I say that constantly. So I'm here to talk to you about change management, which can apply to everything. So I want to start off with why the title, A Need, Not a Want. Again, there's some folks in the audience who I've worked with, and I'm really pleased to see them. I'm an eater. I love food. And so when James, the first thing he asked me for was a title, and I thought I haven't even thought about what I'm going to write or what I'm going to speak about. So I thought, well, I love food. Food went from a need to a want. And I thought, okay, wait, I can't talk about that because I just really want food all the time. So stay with me. I went to Maslow. Do you remember public school where you learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs? And at the bottom, it was food. But at the top, it was growth and development. It was fulfillment. It was, the big psychology term of self-actualization. Well, when I look at what change management does, really what it's doing is helping people grow, helping people fulfill a need. So when we think about employee engagement, employee engagement isn't about salary and all that good stuff. It's about helping people grow in development. That's why people get engaged. Change management just applies that thinking to projects and initiatives, regardless of their size. It can be a big change, a little change. Okay? So everybody in the room, put your hands up if you're going through a change right now. And that could be a change at home, a change at work. Okay, great. Out of all of you, and it could be anyone else, is anyone driving a change? Are you doing the change to others? Put your hand up. Okay, great. So for the folks who are going through the change, have you had this look on your face recently? Okay, because I know I have. And I'm going through lots of change, both personally and professionally, so that look on that person's face has been on my face quite frequently. So really that person is saying at this point in time, maybe they're looking at a piece of technology that they've just been asked to use, and they haven't received any training, no communications. So this person is saying probably, I don't really have what I need to be successful, okay? That means when that person embarked on that change journey, the right tools and supports weren't in place, okay? I can talk briefly about the city of Ottawa and all the change that we're going through. I think, and I actually don't know the demographics in the room, I think largely a lot of you are from the city. As you know, we invested $80 million in technology. And I can talk about all the different types of change. There's process change, there's governance change, there's change in organizational structure. And to be honest, as much as realignment and restructuring is scary, I find that's kind of old hat now. Oh, we're changing again? Oh, now you want me to report to so-and-so? Okay, but technology is overwhelming organizations today, across the board, private, public. Organizations are making huge investments, $80 million for the city. That's a huge investment that council approved. So I'm not going to belabor the point on technology. All that to say, though, that largely when you're probably experiencing change, particularly at work, a lot of it has to do with technology, big and small. Okay. So I liked this visual because first and foremost, as I said, change can be small, it can be big, and it can be so big that you have to take some steps back to look at it. Small, the weather. We're Canadian. We love talking about weather. It doesn't matter, right? That's how we start our day. We're probably talking about it at lunch, and then at the end of the day, we finish off with weather. What's going to happen tomorrow? Similarly, one of the things I was thinking about as I was thinking about small change, I was thinking about folder management. So I know in my group of change management folks, there's about 10 or 11. As soon as you start to talk about something that you think is small, which is let's just organize how we save our files. That seems like a small change. I will tell you there's outcry, rebellion, And all of a sudden, folder structures, I call them black market folder structures, they start being created. They're not being backed up because people like what they have. They know where they can find it, even if it doesn't make sense. Okay? So that very small and simple example of folder management means that change management is still required. A structured change management approach is still required. There still has to be some thinking applied. So we go into a big change. Now, big can be lagging. So again, I'll use a technology reference. Within our client services branch, and really that's the face of the city to citizens, is our client services branch. They implemented Lagin, which is a software that helps them capture cases. So all inquiries that citizens have. It wasn't smooth by any stretch of the imagination, but you know what? This technology is a good thing. It is helping us bring our processes together. It's been a long journey, but it's been, at the end of the journey, it's been a good one. We learned a lot there. That's a big change, okay? Sort of maybe a moderate to big change is what finance has done here, implementing a business intelligence reporting tool. Right now, that's centralized to the unit, but that's a pretty big change. You know, you're asking people to now look at a different reporting tool, something where they could go into SAP and do things in their sleep. They now have to learn a new way of doing that. And the massive change. So I put Lansdowne there as an example because sometimes these transformational journeys that we go on, they're multiple years in the making. Certainly that investment in technology, that's been 3 to 5 years, 5 years probably at this point. And if any of you are amongst those types of change projects, what you need to really think about is how do we keep the people that we're impacting with us at every step of the journey? Because I tell you, after year 1, people don't believe it's going to happen. So what is it in terms of the work that you need to do to communicate, to celebrate, to bring those people with you? Because you know you still have a few years to go. And what are you looking for, and what can you celebrate in the sense to share back with those people who are being impacted, to say, you know what, we have made progress. This is what it looks like here. This is what it looks like here. So again, change management is very much a structured approach. There's a methodology, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it in a minute. So what's change? You know, change is the gap. And the most important thing that I want to say to you about this is that my most important interaction with a project team or a business manager is to sit down with them and say, okay, so I kind of understand your as is, and hopefully you do too, because to be honest, we don't always know where we are today, and we actually have to invest some work in understanding that. But I want to know, what's your desired end state? I want that project manager or business manager to tell me, what does that look like? When you get there, what does that look like? What does that feel like? Okay? What are people going to be saying? When you get to this desired end state, what are people actually going to be saying about it? And of course, that's a positive perspective, right? You want to envision positively, what are people going to be saying about it? So if at that point, the business manager or project manager can't tell me all of those lovely answers at the high level, right? I don't expect a deep dive. They're not ready for me yet. Because change management consultants, we're brought in to help you manage the difference or the delta between your as is and your to be. But if you don't know where you're going, I certainly can't help you get there. Okay? So that's a really important point. If you are ever asked to support any type of change initiative, maybe not in the formal change management role, think about that as is and to be. Seek clarity constantly. It's the most critical, I think it's the most critical factor to an initiative's success often. And change management, the methodology. So that's just moving the people. That's moving the people from that as is state, whatever that looks like, to the to be state, okay? But if you leave them behind, guaranteed, your change and its success is going to be challenged. You have to bring people on the journey. And the one thing that often what happens with senior leadership and leaders is that they are so good at strategic thinking, they are so good at visioning, sometimes they're so far down the path, if this is a starting line, they're down here, right? But you're still back at the starting line going, I don't understand. Like, help me understand that. So again, another piece for you to think about is how do we, from the very beginning of this change, even when we're just conceptualizing what might be, how do we start to talk to people about that so they're with us every step of the way? Okay, so the most important thing to reinforce the need for a structured change management approach is the first statistic. So McKinsey reports that 70% of projects fail. I think this is about a 2012 statistic. Okay, 70%. So that's significant in my mind, and some of those cases actually still included change management, and sometimes they still did fail. So in my mind, that just reinforces, you know what? Start with a structured change management approach, and you have a hope in hell. Okay, so obstacles to successful change contributors. An organization by the name of ProSci has been in the business for 20 years, and a lot of the change management consultants at the City of Ottawa are certified in change management from ProSci. They have, over their 20 years, have done about 8 benchmarking studies in change management. So again, I guess I'm trying to reinforce that, because I think typically finance folks are fairly quantitative, that just to reinforce that change management has a qualitative piece to it when we are conducting research to inform how we approach change situations, our methodology. Okay, so you can see the obstacles to successful change and the contributors to successful change. That number one item relates to sponsorship. So if you don't have sponsorship out of the gate, right away you have the most important thing not on your side. Okay, so often leaders just don't really fully appreciate how important they are to change. So you need to get them from the get-go. Okay, and the only other thing I want to speak to here is communication. Don't be scared to communicate when you don't have the answer. Best practices tell us that if you communicate to folks and you can transparently say, you know what, I don't know that, but I'm going to get back to you, you have increased trust in the relationship with those who are impacted. They are more likely to come and tell you what's going on with the change, more likely to ask questions. All of those things help with successful change. So change management's multidimensional. What I mean by that, just pragmatically speaking, forgetting all the jargon, it becomes personal very quickly. It's emotional because we're all human beings, and I don't know anyone who's really emotional. I think there are very few of us who are. And it's really a lot of effort, and there has to be a lot of conversations. Okay, the best conversations in a project during change are the ones that happen when you're having coffee, the ones that happen in the hallways, the ones where you just go drop in an office. So if you've ever been part of a large project, you'll know that often solutions aren't defined within that meeting where there's an agenda. They're defined in the hallways, and they're defined at the coffee table. And don't lose that. That bit of chaos and informality is really critical to change. So the model that we follow is ADKAR, Awareness, Desire, Knowledge, Ability, and Reinforcement. This is a ProSci model, and really what it does is say, before you can do anything, are the folks aware that change is happening? The example that I like to use is Hydro. So I think before Hydro did the prime time billing, all of a sudden I was getting all this information about, pie charts that said, here are the costs at certain times of the day. Did you know that your appliances draw this amount of power, da 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 da. So, they were going to do what they were going to do anyway, but they were informing me and educating me and building my awareness so that when the change came, not that I had to agree with it necessarily, but I understood it. Okay, me not understanding a change is a real barrier to me wanting to be a part of that change and desire. Okay, next piece, so it's desire. Desire is very hard to control. The one thing that you can control is WIFM. So if you take anything away from here, a little acronym WIFM. You might not remember what it means, but you'll just walk away saying WIFM. So what's in it for me? Okay, you've got to group your stakeholders. So if this part of the audience was management, so talking about the behavioral intelligence tool, this was management. These were the folks who actually had to use the tool. These were the folks who actually benefited from the tool. So they're the recipients of that reporting. I'm going to tell something different to here, here, and here to make sure that my messages are customized to what they need to hear and understand. Okay? I don't have time to go through all of these. I guess what I'll focus on is knowledge. You need to front-end load your training. So for any type of, and it can be an organizational change or it could be a technology change, what learning has to occur? Do you have to teach people new skills? Do you have to teach them how to learn a particular technology? I can tell you I have real live examples where big budget, big dollars, they didn't budget for training, and they didn't actually budget into their project schedule training time. And that's a huge miss, because if people don't have knowledge, how do they get to being successful? How do they get to bringing your change through and being successful? Okay. Okay, so preparing for change, engaging for change, reinforcing. This is really the 3 steps that we follow. Folks can email me afterwards and I can send you sort of a more there's detailed steps within each of these buckets. But basically when you prepare for change, you're understanding impact. Okay, that's the difference between the as is and the to be. You've got to understand impact. You've got to understand how many people. Is it 500? Is it 50? Are they all in the same group? Are they all in finance, or are they across the city? What's the characteristics of the change? Is it changing their whole job? Are they actually changing positions? Or is it really like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 1, we're not changing their job at all. We actually have detailed assessments that go through that. Okay? You need to manage the change. That's all about communications, engagement, and training plans. And then you need to reinforce. You need to demonstrate that you're committed to the change. Okay? You need to recognize, but you need to measure as well. If you can't measure the change, that means when you first started, you probably didn't know where you were heading. Okay. Okay. So very quickly, the things that I want to leave you with, if you remember nothing else, I think these slides will go out, so you'll have this. Take a structured approach. Don't feel like change is happenstance. Take a structured approach. There's tons of tools on the web. Grab one. You'll be better off than if you have nothing. Start with change sponsorship. Make sure your leaders are on board, whomever they are. Make sure they're on board. Get clarity on your end state. If you don't have that, you can't help anybody. Communication does not equal building desire. They are 2 separate things. I can communicate all I want, but have I developed any desire in you to join me? Not necessarily. Focus on that training and that learning. That's critical. Always assess and reinforce the change. Celebrate it. And guess what? It's not proprietary. Everybody can be a change leader. The skills are there. You just have to develop them. And everything that I'm reading right now, project managers and leaders, if you don't have this skill, it's a miss, I think. So thank you so much. Thanks, James.
That was awesome. Thank you, Christina.